Hey everyone, thanks for coming tonight. Quick introductions, I'm Sean McLaughlin, I'm the product manager at OneView Healthcare. So we are a healthcare software development company based out of Blackrock. Founded in Ireland, originally looking at a hospital inpatient solution, which was around patient engagement, and looking to optimize and digitize clinical workflows. Our primary markets are Australia, across the Middle East, and North America. We floated on the Australian ASX on Paddy's Day 2016. I believe it was a great party, but unfortunately I joined after that, shortly after that. And being a product organisation, after that, a growth stage organisation, we looked at what other markets we could go into, our core competencies of digitizing care workflows and to optimize them, looking at engagement, looking at putting information into the hands of a hospital world, the patient, and trying to give that person an idea of self-management of their own health and looking to optimize their health outcomes as a result. And then you look at that and you look at the idea of senior living, wellness in residential environments, be it independent living, assisted living, what we would think as nursing homes, through to hospice care. And you look at it and say, you can almost lift that up, that idea of wellness, and drop it into this context. It's people providing care to people in a care context. And then we get into it and realize wellness is so different in this idea of someone's home. It's not someone's short-term stay of 5 days in the hospital, I've got a broken leg, or I just need to fix their leg and send them home. This is an idea of holistic wellness. And before a lot of the team here, a group of technology people got it into their heads of what that wellness should look like and what the problem was we should try and solve. We thankfully recruited the likes of Dr. Joan Cahill from Trinity, from the School of Psychology, to help us really understand what's the problem we're really trying to solve here. For the industry, so we're B2B, so we sell our product to organizations who provide care. But ultimately, we're enabling them to provide care to seniors within their care context. So we had to pause and look at what does wellness look like. It's not just biological wellness in terms of I've broken my leg, can I fix your leg and send you home? It's enabling someone to live an active daily life, to have that same idea of owning their own wellness and have better outcomes, but owning that wellness is very different. It's a more holistic view of your day-to-day, what impacts your day-to-day wellness, and how can we enable organizations to enhance that wellness, and how can we enable that person to own that wellness and what that wellness looks like in that context on a day-to-day basis. So we've made a few research collaborations around Ireland. Joan is really informed of what that wellness should look like and how technology can enhance that wellness. And hopefully today we can take you through that journey of the research, what that wellness looks like, and at the end I'll wrap it up into what our product looks like as a result of taking this step back and looking at the wellness and taking on Joan's input. We'll start off with Joan taking you through the research basis and the ethos of the problem we're trying to solve.
Okay, thanks to everyone for coming. Before I start the presentation, I'm going to tell you about a presentation I was at a few weeks ago. So I went to this presentation in the Royal College of Surgeons on medical professionalism, and there was this amazing guy who was a medical ethicist, and he gave a presentation, and when he started, he did a magic trick, which was a wonderful way to start a presentation, and then he presented an ethical dilemma. And he wanted to frame his research in terms of this ethical dilemma and how we do research. So the dilemma was a lady who had significant mental health issues, and she had presented in the hospital for treatment and had been discharged. And a couple hours later, she was found in the grounds of the hospital with a lot of burns over her body. And so they took her obviously back into A&E and attempted to treat her. And in the course of this, they discovered a tattoo. And the tattoo read, "Do not resuscitate." So they had a medical ethical dilemma. So this was really wonderful to hear about this, and it was very profound, and from a healthcare perspective it was very profound. But it made me feel, between the magic trick and the medical dilemma, I could never give a presentation again because it would be so hard to, how do you give presentations after this? So we have someone in our team, Raoul, he's not here today, and he juggles. So I said, maybe we'll get Raoul to come in and do some juggling, and I'll have a few slides. So that wasn't going to happen. So what I have today in our sort of our war chest or arsenal is a number of different personas. And they're personas around real older people, which are informed from the stakeholder research we've done. And they present a case for new assisted living technology. And really they present a case which moves beyond a biomedical model of care, and it looks at a social and psychological model of care. And that's really the story I want to take you through. And as part of telling that story, there's one big message that I hope to communicate without juggling and having medical dilemmas, and that's a message that we need to really look at the stakeholder need and design solutions that take into account the different dimensions of wellness. But when we do this, we need to remember that we're designing a societal vision and a model of a community and how it lives. And sometimes when we're developing technology, we don't think about this. So this is what this presentation is about, and then you're going to see a demonstration. Okay, so quite a few slides to get through. I always plan to do something with not too many slides, and then I just get carried away. So I have 9 points, but the points that are in bold, point 4 and 5, which is on the wellness management approach and the user interface exams, I want to spend some time on those. So if you bear with me while I take us through this story. Okay. So my starting point in OneView, after arranging a research services contract and figuring out a collaboration model, was in a room. But it was in a room where I was presented with another room. And it was an architectural drawing of a room with sensors and a bed. So I really need to figure out, well, who's in that room? And ask the guys, well, who are we designing for? So we looked at Zena, who is an older adult with the onset of early onset of dementia, but in this case she's mid-stage dementia. So how would this technology work for her? And why are we even having this technology for her? What purpose does it serve? So as we were talking about this story, we said, well, actually, Zena is maybe in a residential home, and it's a home, and it's a community, so there's other people there. So she's spending time with Frank, who's got early cognitive decline, functional decline, and diabetes. He's here for 2 weeks, in a respite. She's also maybe passing corridors with Richard, who's active and healthy, and has a huge amount of independence. And maybe also Anne, who has very limited mobility. She's maybe had a stroke, and maybe one side of her body she can't use, so she can't reach for a glass. It's quite difficult to interact with the computer. But more than that, as part of this community, Zena and these other people, they have family members, and there's nursing and care staff that they interact. So what we're looking at is we're designing an experience which is close to home, but it's about a community experience, and it's about a care experience. And that's how we need to be posing our questions, and that's the framing device, if you like. So I'm not sure, do any of you know a whole lot about assisted living, but there is sort of a range or a spectrum of settings, whether you're talking about the home, an assisted living community, a post-acute care context, a step-down hospital, residential care, which would be like the nursing home model here in Ireland, where people are trained in there permanently or maybe for a respite. And these are different funding models. Some of the customers for OneView are in the US, and this might be privately funded, and it's not a community model. So there's different business models behind the introduction of these technologies. But always as a human factors researcher, we go back to the person. So we're looking at a person with different levels of ability. And I suppose in this care context, we look at their independence and what activities of daily living can they carry out independently or with the help of other people. We look at their functional ability, can they move around, communication and sensory ability, their cognitive ability, and this is where we can move into early cognitive decline and dementia, their mental health, and of course we consider that they're entering into this with not just maybe one morbidity, maybe multiple morbidities. And we need to know a little about their social situation. So again, looking into the kind of social model of care. So the social scaffolding, if you like, that people provide to other people is very important. So they might be single, they might have a living spouse or partner, they might be widowed, they might have an extended family or not, friends in the community, they might have carers that they interact with on a daily basis. But there's also the staff. So looking from the other side of the coin, there's staff that potentially could experience compassion fatigue and high workload, that may or may not have the right levels of training. And all of these staff are involved in care processes, from moving in to undertaking care assessments and care planning, to providing day-to-day compassionate care, to discharge or end-of-life care. So there's a lot of theory which informs this. So this picture, this room, and what I'm saying is not really a room, it's a community and it's a care context. And I'm not going to take you through the journey of this theory, but there's a lot around kind of health and wellness, around relational autonomy, so how older people's independence is enabled by their relationships, social relationships with other people, the importance of social connection and community, self-management, ability, and all of this is framed in terms of a rights perspective. But there's also theory around staff and professionalism and how patient-centred care is delivered around safety and avoiding, medical errors, around performance and, initiating behaviour change for everybody and how technology can support behaviour change. So this is the theoretical context for this piece of research. There's something we don't have time to take you through, but not long after being in OneView, I shared this with my colleagues, and it's a video by a man called Dick Wyman, and it's all around living in an assisted living facility and the personal experience of this. And I would urge you to maybe look at this to see actually what it's like, because these ideas of relationship-centred care, of identity, of rights, everything, how it takes a community to support a person, everything is embodied in this video. In fact, I could just show that video, but I'm so addicted to slides that I'm showing a load of slides. So the objectives of the research for OneView was to use technology to improve resident wellness and quality of care. So it was all around taking this theory and doing field research to look at how can we use technology to deliver person-centred care and have attention to wellness and focus on ability, and directly address issues around user acceptability and ethics. Because we don't just bring technology into the equation because it's available. We actually need to step back and think, well, why are we using this technology? How does it deliver benefits to the different stakeholders? Maybe these stakeholders have different goals, and how do we navigate the course of technology in that context? Back to my arrows. So there's a number of people, the team, there's a few guys just in the front here. You've met Sean, Niall is over here, Stefan is here, Mary, Daniel, Stephen, I don't think I have you here, you should be here. But we're all here present, everyone wave. So this has been human factors research, and I won't go into extended detail, but it's a qualitative research, it's action research. And the overall human factors approach is, well, it's the same story as lots of the research that I do. It's premised on the idea that the solutions for seniors and other actors are interrelated. So we're looking at optimising benefits across these different stakeholders. So it's a stakeholder evaluation approach, and it's involved a community of practice. And we're taking a lifespan perspective, so looking at the home, assisted living communities, residential homes, moving into more acute situation and palliative care. And it has ethics approval. There's been 4 studies. 3 are active at the moment, and I'm directly involved in, and the 4th hasn't happened. So the first is the general assisted living study, which has involved interviews with over 50 stakeholders, including older adults, nurses, geriatricians. There's a separate study that has ethics approval from the Mater Hospital. It's in Fairview Community Unit, that's PAC service, post-acute care, providing rehabilitation and enablement for older adults in the North Dublin area. So OneView are an international company, so they have operations in the US and Australia, and obviously this research has been undertaken in Ireland, but we need to broaden it to these other geographical regions. So there's research underway by another team in the USA, looking at care models and culture and adapting some of this, and also looking at commercial side, so return investment and who's paying for this technology, what's the business model behind it, what are those interests. So any good human factors research involves some level of implementation, and we all know, as a couple of my colleagues here involved in implementation, that you really don't understand a whole lot about the need until you actually implement it. So all the co-design, all the ethnography you can do is great and helps inform the solution, but once you actually implement it, you really start to understand your domain in the space. So we're hoping, so what I'm showing you hasn't been implemented, so it comes with that caveat, and we hope to implement it soon. So the 4 studies I'm just going to skip through, but 3 of them are active. So I mentioned this lifespan perspective, and there's different settings. So the pictures that you can't really see there, I'll just move back to it. These are personas, so the different settings we've persona, and we dig down into the different people and what their needs are and how they interrelate. So to really understand, well, who are the people, what is the experience, what are the states of being, and how does this community and care experience work? So when we did this research, and at the very beginning, I actually found it quite difficult to undertake because some of it was maybe slightly negative. So there was a lot around people's apprehensions moving into a nursing home or assisted living facility. And there was lots around failures of professionalism. So, nurses and care assistants experiencing burnout, compassion fatigue, overworked, and maybe not delivering the kind of resident experience we would hope for. All of the, over 50 people that I interviewed described what they were looking for. And this was, home away from home, a place where I'm minded. And one of the interesting things is when we were looking at community, people said, it's really important that the community that I develop here works well for me and that I relate to other people. And in particular, I relate to care staff because I probably have an impression that how I get on with care staff will directly influence the quality of my care. So that, they really need to work well in this community. So we looked at, well, what are the states of being that we want to develop for residents? I'm not going to go through all of these. The sizes of these indicate their level of importance in terms of thematic analysis, but really we want to promote quality of life and social participation and purposeful activity. There are states that we need to accept that are part of this lived experience. So we need to manage or mitigate or reduce. And this is things around loss of identity or depression or powerlessness. And in particular we want to avoid infantilization, deception, and particularly a reduction in human contact. So that's for residents. But equally for staff, we want to promote professionalism with this technology. So teamwork, healthy challenges about patient or resident care issues. We want to manage the potential possibility of compassion fatigue, the occurrence of safety events, the objectification of the patient. And we certainly want to avoid compassion fatigue and poor teamwork and elder abuse. So sometimes with the best of intentions, you can introduce technology. So let's say, for example, we want to address loneliness for older adults. If we introduce this technology and a lot is automated, are we going to end up worsening that situation? Are we going to be taking staff away from the older adults that need direct personal care? So sometimes these goals might be at odds. So we need to really look at this. So the wellness management approach is all around enabling holistic healthcare delivery and predictive risk management and supporting resident and staff communication. So the idea is that the product that's been developed and that Sean will demonstrate to you, it's to consider the requirements of older adults across these different age care settings and cultural contexts. So we have Richard, who might be in an assisted living community, that we really want to promote social connection and participation. Frank, who's in respite, who's early cognitive decline, and we want to really support his independence and education and self-management of health. And for Zena, who has mid-stage dementia, we want to support family participation, purposeful activity, and with the technology maybe we're tracking falls and wandering. So really, we're doing different things for different people. So it's all around optimising stakeholder relationships and the clinical information flows around this. So there are different actors in this process and we need to engage these different actors. And as part of that, we're developing technology that supports this engagement across these different actors. So it's resident-centered technology. So here we see Zena in the middle, and of course these are notionally the three different pillars of wellness. We have different types of technology. Now they're not formally mapped to individual pillars, as we know these pillars are all interrelated. But you see we move from medication management, digital signage, telehealth, to bed and clothing sensors, activity sensors, technology supporting communication, meal ordering, data analytics, entertainment, and all of this is supporting these states around independence, ability, belonging, resilience, safety, connection, and in particular wellness. So Sean will explain some of the different technologies. I won't get to that just yet. But what I want to do is now move more formally into wellness and what we mean by this. And this is the serious piece. So we have Zena here. So the picture of Zena you just see, and maybe, for the wellness communications, she's fidgeting, or maybe she's spitting out her food, or she's ringing the call bell a lot of times. maybe Zina's talking to the nurse and she's saying she's not feeling well or asking to leave. Or maybe the carer is talking to Zina and she's asking, how are you sleeping? Are you hungry? Are you feeling any way better? Maybe Zina's talking to her family, she's maybe not recognising them, or maybe she's saying, you know, the pain in my side is getting worse, or where am I, or can I leave? You know, so there's lots of different wellness, you know, conversations and communications that are going on. And this is where we need to bring in the technology. So maybe Jane, Zina's daughter, is talking to the nurse and she's trying to figure out, you know, mum is in more pain. It's hard to tell whether she's any better or any worse. You know, she seems off. You know, it seems like something's wrong. How do you know, is there something wrong? How do we know this? Equally, the staff are communicating amongst themselves. So they're asking, you know, is Zina any better? You know, sometimes they may say things like, and it's quite objectifying the resident, I'm having problems with number 10. So number 10 is Zina in her room. Can you ask the doctor to have a look at her? Maybe she needs to have, you know, a UTI check. And maybe the care team are talking to Zina's daughter Jane and they're saying, you know, we think she has certain issues, maybe she needs more help, we need to look at some assessments, a care plan. So all of this is the space of wellness management. And I suppose my point is that this is where the technology needs to handle these communications and do something useful with it, useful from this perspective of delivering compassionate care and also in terms of, you know, supporting the older adult. So we've lots of questions around how this technology would work, what kind of evidence would be collecting. So this is around process and technology, lots around integrating with the care process. So the business of care is care assessments, care plans, the specification of care tasks, care reporting, events reporting. And then we've lots around the technology, the human factors and ethics side. And this is, you know, these are kind of, you know, for want of a better word, juicy questions around, well, how do we use technology to collect data? How do we do it to make inferences about wellness? So some of you here in the room are using technology this way. So these are the kind of questions we're asking. And then separately, you know, as a human factors person and my colleagues in the room, you know, will ask these other kinds of questions. And this is, well, this technology is in an organisation. So really we're looking at managing organisational change. So how do we do that? And how are we mindful of this? So I'll explain the wellness monitoring approach and what we've learned in the research. So we've learned that wellness management is currently happening. It's part of care practice as it stands. At the moment, it's maybe carried out in a kind of an ad hoc way or an informal way. It's paper-based. Not necessarily, you know, in nursing homes are all 3 pillars addressed. I think people attempt to address all 3 pillars, but it can be difficult. My finger is on one thing, so it's kind of clicking ahead. I'm not there yet, finger. But certainly it needs to be guided by a principled approach. So we need to go to first principles around care. So this is, we need to look at person-centred care, the resident experience. We need to consider resident ability, and that the resident is, you know, a partner in the care. You know, that they're not someone that's separate from the care that's happening to them, and it's integrated in the care process. So we've learned a number of things about wellness management more specifically, and I suppose the question I have to everyone here is, you know, we were delighted to get this invitation from the Quantified Self group, but I suppose we were thinking, well, is it a question of how much? What are we quantifying? Is that the right way to approach it? The question that we really think should be asked is there a change from normal? So we have the idea of the residence baseline and what has changed. And as we age, the ground is always shifting, you know, so someone's profile is changing. We're all changing from the moment we've been conceived, you know, at a cellular level, we're aging. But equally, as we get older, there's changes. And sometimes, and I'm not specifically talking about, and I have some colleagues here who are experts in dementia, where, you know, there's, you know, sudden big shifts in care, but there's always this gradual changing. So we need to know about the person, well, what's different today or over a period of time? And how do we know about this baseline? And what data can we use to establish a baseline? Also, coming to this thinking quantified self, maybe we're coming from another angle. And the other angle we're coming from is reporting, which takes into account multiple perspectives. And this includes multiple observational perspectives, but also the idea that we can use sensors, so we can automate some of this. But really, from talking with staff in residential homes and in post-acute care facilities, we've learned that it's about interpreting and acting on signals. So we can get information, but we need to interpret it, and we need to have care actions around it. So this is all around the care response. So if wellness management is to do anything, and if this technology is to do anything, it needs to action care responses. And it needs to be instructive in terms of telling us, well, are our care responses appropriate? So it needs to evaluate our care responses. And also it needs to be predictive. So it's no point if we're reacting. We need to be ahead of the game. We need to be predicting changes in wellness. So you see over here on the left, my colleagues here, I think she's here, Mary, has developed across the 3 pillars this different symbology. So the idea that there's no change. So we have 3 different icons for the biopsychosocial, and everything is normal and routine, no change, everything's in the green. So I spent a lot of time doing research in cockpits with TCAS events and traffic light systems, and I suppose this has influenced it, but it's the idea of applying the traffic lights concept to looking at change. So we've no change, we've minor change, and that means we're monitoring something. There's significant change and there's action required, and then there's major change and there's significant care actions required. So that's, now, no person is in the green all the time, and no one person has all 3 pillars in the same way necessarily. And also these pillars interrelate. So just on that point, we've learned a lot about these signals. So we're looking at signals, and then we're interpreting them and we're acting on them. So we've learned that for each pillar there's a lot of different factors, and I'll show you some of these factors. There's an interrelationship between pillars and factors. And even though we could have this nice complex picture of factors and look at everything, maybe that's not really necessary. Wonderful to map them all, but actually practically speaking, maybe a number of key ones to focus in is enough. And this is where we're looking at personalisation for a specific resident. So we're looking at what factors makes most sense to track for this person at this point in their care journey, at this age, with these conditions, with this cognitive ability, with this level of mental health, with depression, with whatever is the constellation that we're looking at. We've also learned that it's hard to interpret the signals, as I mentioned. So this is quantifying wellness. So change to any one factor in an individual pillar can influence the other factors in that pillar. But also that change can influence factors in other pillars. Okay, so there's a whole lot of unexpected stuff that may be potentially going on. But this gets into as well individual differences. But one thing that what has been helpful in this research with working with nurses and doctors is looking for the reasons for change. And if there is a reason for change, this can impact on the care decision. So if we understand the why, which is what's going on. But one of the things that can be difficult as well is it can be difficult to know, have we interpreted the signals correctly? And have we acted correctly? So we may know what's going on, but we may not take the right action. And there's a level of waiting and monitoring, trying different things. Again, individual differences come in. And certainly, there is a case for using analytics to give support or help in this area. So we've also learned that for older adults with different levels of ability, the systems need to be simple and intuitive. And so if they're providing survey feedback on how they're feeling, are they happy today? Maybe using voice that's multimodal and touch. But we need to look carefully at protecting the personal sphere. So look at issues around who's access to this information. Equally for nurses and care assistants, it needs to be embedded in the process, it needs to be fast and efficient. And for family members, it needs to enhance their sense of partnership in care. We've also learned that managing and implementing change isn't a walk in the park, and we've all done it to different degrees. So whether we're looking at digital transformation, we're looking at process transformation. In some cases, we may be looking at changes in culture. The kind of ideas we have around patient-centered care may not be the culture in a particular nursing home, and there may be a piece of work there. So we're looking at changing culture. We also need to look at cost and business models and compliance and regulation. And some of this space isn't very well defined. So we're learning as the space is learning as well. So there's lots of different factors. I'm not going to talk you through. I'm going to close up in the next 5 or 6 minutes. So I'll just take you through them as a quick kaleidoscope. So in terms of the biological, we're looking at mobilities, the level of support for activities of daily living, night sleep, fatigue and day sleep, eating and drinking, toileting, pain. pressure sores, body temperature, the basic level of physical activity, physical exercise, wandering, falls, number of nurse bells calls. And for each of these we've established a tentative time period that they might be tracked and what we're looking at in terms of change. What does change mean? Moving on to the psychological factors, some of these might be obvious to you or not. Mood, differences in cognitive ability, so changes in awareness, changes in terms of understanding instructions, memory of person, place or time. We're looking at someone's behaviour, is there a difference in terms of their level of stress? Are they crying? We all have tics. I'm sure if I were to look at this, I have loads of tics. We may be more or less withdrawn. Are they, is the person trying to collect themselves? So these kinds of changes in behaviour. Equally, there's dementia-specific behaviours that we might be looking at. So certain kinds of challenging behaviours, or self-harm, or wandering. Again, nurse bell requests. So some of these, you see the factors are spanning, the different pillars. Engagement in hobbies and interests. So someone who's normally, knitting or reading books, that they stopped, and why. So moving on to the social factors, we've a lot there. We need to first of all understand their personality and level of engagement, their time in the room, family visits, are they going out less, these kinds of things. So we proposed a process, and it's around establishing a baseline of pre-admissions and further detailing that on the day and follow-up on admissions. Then gathering evidence around the current state and getting feedback across these different people that I've described, so observational and sensors, evaluating the current state, comparing against the baseline, notifications around state change to the different stakeholders, taking immediate care actions and interventions. So this is all around care activity and reporting. So you might be getting someone a new walking aid, or arranging a social activity, or arranging an aromatherapy session, So care actions which are addressing a pillar and an issue with the pillar. And then moving into the kind of the nuts and bolts of care, it's around assessments and care planning. So monitoring the state, monitoring the intervention, maybe looking at assessments, follow-up assessments, looking at the care plan, changing the care plan, all in collaboration with the resident and their family. And then updating the baseline. So I started with mentioning we age at a cellular level, we age all the time, so our baseline is changing. So we need to monitor and assess this and re-establish the baseline. And then in a more kind of, step it up a bit, we need to do something which is a little bit more profound. And this is where the analytics has a role. So this is to use analytics to learn about care delivery. So where we understand interventions against certain profile types or with certain types of staff challenges and what works and what doesn't work. So from the work that I've done across the different sites, we've established an approach, and I'll take you through this approach, and it's a phased approach, and it's starting with baby steps. So we're looking at different options and levels of intelligence. So with the first, I'll take you through these different phases. So the first phase is everybody's reporting on wellness. And wellness information is available to all, and it's integrated in existing reports. So whether we have surveys or specific wellness reports. And this is kind of at a manual level. Stepping it up a bit, we're doing phase 1, but also staff are reporting on the actions taken to manage wellness. Phase 3 is we're doing 1 and 2, but the system automates a basic wellness summary and some kind of evaluation across these 3 pillars. And it's based on a triangulation of information across the different actors. Then we can start to, move it along and do something a little bit more detailed. And this is, the system might recommend care actions. So in case there's ball drops, maybe the system has knowledge of typical actions that work for a resident with this profile. And can, the nurse or care assistant can propose alternatives, and all actions are documented. So we're tracking what are we doing. Further down the line, maybe the system can do this, but it can also request reports from different actors in terms of the status of care activity. Are things working, and why aren't they working? Again, it can do something more. It can provide intelligence as to care outcomes, requirements for reassessments or other interventions. And then, and this is where I have a huge interest, it's wider reporting and analytics over time for a care facility, per issue, per intervention, per patient. So it's actually a learning system, and it's contributing to learnings around this. So the initial implementation that we're looking at is moving across the kind of first, second and third phase. The objective is really around promoting awareness and action. So that's a minimum level requirement. So dealing with this picture. I'm going to turn myself. So we've identified the kinds of data that we need to track. So across the pillars, we've identified what data, what the source is, and what we'll do with it. So I'm now just going to show you some user interface examples before I hand over to Sean, who's waiting very patiently, and I appreciate it. So if any of you are familiar with balsamic, so these are prototypes that were developed, and I'm doing co-design activities with older adults, with nurses, with care assistants. So this reflects the output of 3 different rounds of co-designs with older adults, and these are adults with different levels of ability. So I'm showing you a dashboard, which is like the first screen on a tablet that you might see. And really the idea I want to get across is, there's progressive levels of simplifications. The first 5, aside from this one over here, this is on a phone. Generally the idea is on a tablet, and you have a menu, and potentially, you can just have a simple menu like the first one. In a care home, your community is very important, and interacting with nursing staff, so maybe pictures of those and a personalised image. That could be, a picture of a granddaughter, it could be a picture of you cooking dinner with other residents the previous evening. Moving further down, some people are interested in getting wellness information. So you might get, direct feedback about your own wellness, and maybe prompts to actually, try some music that we know that works or is soothing. And this kind of display is for a more power user. You've got thumb clicks on either side, huge menu, lots of options, curated, non-curated content. You've also got notifications that might be updated daily, and as I said, this is the phone piece. So this is a wall-mounted display. Again, it's an early-stage prototype. You'll notice that there's no graphical design here. This is just placeholders for information. But I've cheated a little bit. I've put in the wellness indicator just to follow this thread of wellness, so where it's situated in these different technologies. But here, this would be in what we're modelling for the PAC service, and it's giving information about the situation of the resident, their specific status or the patient in terms of wellness, what care tasks or activities are due, and these kinds of things. In terms of the nurse system, again, more balsamic prototypes, this is showing you over here, you see the nurse comes in and she sees that she's a patient, she sees their status, their level of independence, and there's a wellness indicator as one set of icons that's driving this. And as I mentioned, at the outset, a carer needs to know what's the wellness over time and what's the picture. So you can look at any one, as you can see some way across the days of what's been going on. Is this a new trend or not? Drive down into the information, you can see if I hover over here, there's wellness here. You see full detailed information across their vitals, self-reports, information from over here is events and analytics. This is coming from the sensors. We have a piece that we haven't really figured out, and I'll get to it, and it's around care contact, but we've a little placeholder for it where we want to evaluate care contact, because we really don't want to have this technology taking people out of the system. Here you see a display which is more about the person, and you see their experience box, their buddy, what matters to them. This is all part of wellness. The next set of slides is showing you the care task. You see wellness here is embedded in the kinds of information we're looking at. So it spans the 3 pillars. And equally you can generate specific wellness reports. You see here, I understand I'm breezing through all of this, but it's just to give you a flavour. We have a dedicated wellness section, so what the nurse or care assistant, and there's different displays for both, they can actually, sorry it's just jumping on me, bear with me. They can actually get further information, so they can go in and see across a day or a series of days what's going on. They can look at wellness reports, assessments, they can dig deep into the baseline. Equally, this is just showing you a mock-up. They can look through the different factors, what's changing and how, and get analytics around this. So this is moving away from the basic prototypes. So in parallel, the product is being developed. This research is feeding into the product. They're using agile methods. Got that one in. So here you see what you saw in the early stage prototype. We have a menu. So this is the tablet display. Here, the resident is given feedback around mood. Here again, nurse display, it's more graphical interface. So really, just to close, change isn't going to be easy, and introducing this kind of thing, it's going to take time. But certainly to promote wellness for residents and well-being, any kind of technology solution needs to factor in the 3 pillars of well-being. Reporting needs to involve all stakeholders, and we need to not just consider the person's wellness status, we need to look at the actions and evaluate the actions taken to address wellness. But we need to start with a simple method. We're not going to get there overnight. All of this research introduces questions around values in society, and what kind of society do we want to be, and how do we want to care for very important people in our community who are older adults. How do we want to promote autonomy and well-being and social participation, protect dignity. With this technology, we're changing the nature of care and care roles. And there is a significant concern around the reduction in human contact and quality of contact. So certainly systems shouldn't replace person-centred care or the time that staff spend with patients. These systems should help them have more eye contact, more touch, more calm voices, feel less stressed. That's the kind of states we want to promote with this technology. Again, it's socio-technical, so technology isn't the only part of the solution. We need well-trained staff, we need staff with good working hours, with proper contracts, in this business there's lots of people who are coming in, who are on contracts, and they don't have good terms. So all the technology in the world isn't going to address that aspect of care. So it's part of a puzzle around care. We're certainly making lots of progress. We haven't figured it all out, we have lots of questions, and we certainly think there's going to be more learning and implementation. So in conclusions, which is the slide I could have just started with, but I'm getting to it at the end, this is, put on my funny voice, beyond technology and sensors. I think it's beyond technology and sensors. I think you'd be fooling yourself if you thought that these are all just questions of sensors. These are questions about society, about care experiences and care delivery. All reporting needs to include multiple perspectives. And it's all about taking action and monitoring our action. Are we doing the right thing? So some of us in the room here are familiar with signal detection theory, which I started out with a long time ago. You look at signals and you got it right. I think there's a lot of discussion at the moment. With the surgical screening, and it's looking at false positives and all of this. It's the same kind of stuff. What are the information we're getting about wellness? How are we acting on it? And are we assessing, are we acting appropriately? So that's where this technology needs to go. It is, of course, about community dwelling. It's about people in those states. It's about social participation, identity and rights. It's about lived experience. So it's all of these things. It's multi-leveled. And I'm going to end with Gunter Rofal, who passed away last January and has been a huge influence for me in terms of understanding the role of technology. So any kind of technology in his framework, and I would totally subscribe to this, is around a societal vision and values. So we're looking at ontological design. So Gunter Rofal comes from a long tradition of hardcore German philosophers like Nietzsche and Schopenhauer and Heidegger, and it's all about ontological design. So it's about being, designing being in the world, our experiences. And this is where we really try to focus in our technology and resident states. These are the states we're looking at. Thanks for listening, and I'll hand over to Sean to show the actual technologies. I've given you a whole lot of time there.
Thanks, Joe. How do I follow that? You can see an ad. The journey we've been on, right, as I say, is we took a step back to try and assess what wellness looked like. Wellness is a very complex topic, but if we take it down the road back, we looked at 3 pillars of wellness: your biopsychosocial pillar of wellness, which made my job a bit easier. So as product manager, I'm meant to be the person who assesses features. What are we going to build, what are we not? Why are we building it? So it became quite a good, as a team, as a product, a compass. So someone said, why don't we build this? It's like, well, how will that feature enhance the residents' biopsychosocial wellness? And if it doesn't, why are we doing it? And then the other way is, we look at digitizing workflows for organizations. It's like, well, we could digitize this, so like an admissions workflow. So an admissions workflow for a facility could be data entry, right? Think of that idea, you've gone up to the reception at a hospital, I need your demographic information, next of kin, insurance information, thanks a million, computer says no, on you go. Or you can optimize that. So we talk about states of well-being. So part of that movement, that admission flow, we talk about, we want to mitigate against the risk of social isolation. We want to promote the idea of belongingness. So part of that flow, we send out a pre-move-in questionnaire survey to the resident and family members to say, tell us about your likes and dislikes. Maybe fill in about your next of kin information now, so that on move-in day you're not stuck in an office answering questions that you could have done in advance. You're trying to streamline that. That workflow could be optimized, and we want to get you in your room, feeling at home and feeling connected. So as part of that flow, you could be joining up to social groups, connected with a like-minded resident for that kind of informal induction tour. And then by the time you get to your room, and you use your OneView tablet, you are feeling connected. We get to the other side of what Joan mentioned, is the idea of relationship-centered care. And we look at all the relationships for the residents and all the stakeholders who impact upon their daily wellness, and all those relationships every day that impact on your biological, psychological, or social wellness. And as Joan showed the slide around mapping our feature sets and our technology around that. So I'll just give you a flavour of that. So this is the resident experience on a tablet. A simple thing of being locked into landscape mode from a human factors point of view, because this is a more stable user interaction for a senior than one-handed and trying to point. So then, this demo will be set up for that power user that Joan talked about at the independent stage. Your thumbs become the high-value navigation zones. Your daily calendar in the middle, his idea is this call to action. We want to promote that you're living an active daily life. That you're out there, you're connected, you're doing self-management, access to your information. So just pulling you in for what's next up today. So this idea within your calendar, you have today's menu options, and you can order whatever it may be, connecting into the kitchen, have a breakfast, select your meal options, coffee, place order. An interesting one, some organizations we talk to say, yeah, we like people to have the ability to order from their room. Others say, actually, no, we want to have the social interaction. So all we want to do is push out like a PDF. Here's today's menu. But we want the resident to come into the canteen, into the dining area, and have a personal interaction to actually order their meals. Lunch menu, whatever it may be, is ordered. The other side, the idea of assessing daily wellness. What is your daily wellness? A quick a survey sent out daily. How are you feeling? How did you sleep? So easy indicators of your holistic daily wellness, which we can send across. And once you've done it, the idea it is removed from your view. Connecting residents, so you've requested transport. If we go back to the relationship centre, so we have concierge type functionality. So pull that resident in, you can book your own taxi, your room environment is going to have an impact on your daily wellness. You've got your bulb gone, lamp or light, connect you to the front of house effectively. Your social community, so to connect you into the social fabric of your community, what social groups are available for me to join. Here are the ones I've already joined. Can I discover new clubs and connect to other groups? View group information, I can join a club, and then I'm getting invitations into my calendar to pull me in to live that active daily life. So the other side of this is, while you're promoting the efficiency to organizations, saying, well, it's a lot easier for your activity coordinator to set up a digital group, let people join it, create a recurring event. The book club meets every Tuesday, 10 a.m. in the coffee shop. They meet to talk about books, have a coffee. It's a lot more efficient than printing a poster and putting it on the wall. The other side of digitizing it is, we now can track it as a wellness indicator. And this idea of personalized care, so on this idea for the individual, over time, if we know, say, Frank typically goes to 5 social activities per week, and now he's only going to 4 a week and 3 a week. So why is Frank no longer looking after a social pillar of wellness? And is there a reason for that? And if we prime that information, we go across, imagine I'm a care member, I come in, I start my shift, I pick up a tablet, I'm going to log in, like role specific, am I logging in as a nurse or a care assistant? So the idea of, here are the residents I'm due to visit today. So, though well and good, we collect everything as data that lives in our data platform, and Braden's our product owner for our data platform here. But we all know that data is data is data, it can be there. You've got to get data in front of the right person and present it to them as information. And if you get it in front of the right person, it can become knowledge. And if it's knowledge, they can action it. And if you action it, you can improve the provision of care and improve the wellness of the people you're caring for. So that's the goal. There's no point in collecting it without presenting it to the right person. So a big part we talk about optimizing workflows is getting the information in front of the right person at the right time for what they're doing. It shouldn't be a distraction. You shouldn't have to go looking for it. I know from working, I previously worked in healthcare IT in an inpatient place, and I worked in the NHS implementing big projects. Care providers don't like technology. They're there to provide care. Technology is kind of a necessary evil. They don't want the first hour of their shift spent searching for information, and the last hour of their shift spent typing that information back into the system, right? And in the middle, it being some obstruction between them and the person they're trying to provide care for. So we try to do is get it in front of them as the right information in front of the right person without them looking for it. So if I'm logging in as a care assistant, I see here's the list of residents I'm due to visit today, and here are their wellness indicators to prime that visit that you spend in the room with them. So we know Frank is here. So before we get into the room, we give this view of their their biopsychosocial wellness on a day-to-day basis. So about Frank, a simple thing, even if today's Frank's wedding anniversary, key dates you pull up before you go into the room. So don't put me into the room and saying, like, observing Frank's mood and saying, Frank's had a terrible mood today, I wonder what's wrong, should I call the doctor, should I call a counsellor, is it the new tablet he's on, what is it? You know, today's Frank's wedding anniversary, Frank's wife passed away a few years ago, Frank's entitled to have a bad day, let's not overthink it, right? Perhaps I'll just spend some time, I'll go in and put the kettle on and have a cup of tea with Frank and we'll sit down, maybe we'll go through some familiar images. That's the idea of giving the right information before you go into the room, and that's a better care experience, right, for that person. Social wellness. So you can see this prototype, this version has incorporated Joan's latest research that's been validated. But it's the same idea, it is that idea of the traffic light system of social wellness. So in this scenario, Frank's social wellness is amber. It's not quite going to as many social activities as is normal for Frank, personalised care. This isn't like how many social activities for a 70-year-old man. It's for Frank based on what we've learned about Frank over time. Here are the activities he's gone to. We've assigned education and goals to Frank, progress notes from previous visits, self-reports, so we can see what Frank has reported, not feeling great, had an okay sleep. We have the idea of passive sensors in the room to gather more information to provide predictive analytics. So we can piece the story together. You know, Frank's had an okay sleep. We can see from a bed sensor that Frank had 6 hours sleep, but he got out of bed 3 times, and he had 5 nurse calls yesterday where he called for the nurse to come into the room. So what does that mean? Frank is slightly confused. This could lead to, okay, perhaps we'll check to see if Frank has a kidney infection or a UTI. And this idea of predictive analytics, so a big use case comes across the board in the idea of wellness for seniors is fall prevention and fall detection. So I'll say, oh, can you get a pendant that the resident can wear, and if they fall, they push the button and alarms go off and people come into the room? It's like, well, you can, but you've fallen at that stage. And the highest instance of falls happen at night time, and chances are you're wearing a pendant at night time. So it's like, what if you can get ahead of it and reduce the risk of a fall? So we know that Frank got out of bed at night time, our bed sensor picks up that Frank's out of the bed, so we put on low level lighting to the bathroom, not full lighting to take Frank out of his circadian rhythm. Our passive movement sensor picks up Frank's been into the bathroom. If after a certain period of time Frank hasn't left the bathroom, movement sensor picks up and he's back into the bed, you can raise a care event. Maybe someone go check on Frank. You wouldn't have had to raise an alarm. If we know Frank, like in this scenario, got up out of bed more often than normal, went to the bathroom more often than normal, let's check and see if he got a kidney infection. So the other big risk of falls is dehydration. So you're out of the bed, going to the toilet more often than that, you're going to be dehydrated. So let's test it in advance, start the rehydration process, get an antibiotics, so now you prevented the fall. So that's the idea of boosting wellness. We've got ambient sensors. The other idea of like wearing Fitbits and wearables, the two sides being the battery life isn't great. What if the battery's gone? We don't want to be charging everything, and skin sensitivity on seniors, especially if you get into memory care and it becomes an agitator. Why am I wearing this? I don't want to wear this. While they're getting more and more passive and they can be brought into clothes, it's not quite there yet. We look at the scenario then of what happens. So before I go into the room, as a care assistant, I can see the relevant information, and then when I'm in the room, what does care look like for Frank, based on Frank's care plan? What am I meant to do when I'm in the room? So that can be things like, based on Frank's care plan, his ADLs, check, I've got a task list. This can all be used to boost quality from the provision of care as well. So if I am the director of care, I'm the nurse manager, when someone goes into the room, are they actually doing what they should have done? How long are they spending in a room? How long are they not? Are we resourced accordingly to provide care like we should be providing care? So we can do all these checklists to see. But the idea, it's not just like these bio tasks. Am I in the room to administer medication? There's other observational tasks, so looking after your psychological, social, observe mood for Frank. So I know, is Frank happy today based on how Frank is normally? Yes, and all these are bubbled up as a visual indicator on Frank's care plan. Observed behavior, and all these are based on the context of care for that team who are visiting. And I add a note to the next person to say, I thought Frank was a bit grumpy today, maybe not, not everything can be kind of done in advance and put into a workflow and a care plan. So the idea, technology doesn't provide care, people provide care. Technology, we're trying to enhance the provision of that care by giving them that information. Another interesting one, just look across the other side of this, is the other side of the care team and that move-in flow. And looking at things and how you improve quality and provide consistent care, as Joan mentioned. You don't want to overburden one member of the care team. You don't want you've got one person with 30 years of care who just knows, they've learned over time, and one person is new, and which person is providing care, and what can you provide it consistently. We had a workshop with a couple of ladies who are memory care nurses in Ireland with like 30 years of experience, and we talked about this idea of like, how would you enhance that move-in flow? So they're showing you the idea of like a medical record, ring right, and here's all the forms you fill out, very medical and assessment driven, and you know, what's your medication, and these sort of medical assessments. I said, what would you have done differently? You know, that idea of night one. So if you could just ask the family in advance, especially for memory care, where people can't always verbalise, one, what they'd like, what their preferences are, and then what's wrong afterwards. How would they like their room? So the idea, you've moved in, it's a big day in your life, even if you're memory care or not, and you're probably agitated, you go to bed, you come in the next day and had a terrible night's sleep, you're in a terrible mood, and you then, that idea, overarching, what is the problem? Problem is, they used to sleep with 2 pillows, and you gave them 1 pillow. They used to sleep with a duvet, and you gave them a scratchy blanket. They like to have a nightlight on. They'd like a glass of water on the sideboard. That idea, and if you just do that, I've learned this over time, that you move in memory care, and just say to the family, tell me, what's their preference for the room? So if you kind of codify that into a workflow, and that's the idea of what we're trying to bring people along on this journey from a care workflow inbound, that we can digitize your workflows, but let's also think about your workflows in a different way to provide personalized care. And the industry, like the demands on the industry, they have to change right now, because the baby boomers in Australia, it's like post-World War, they're becoming an old population. Every 8 seconds, someone in the USA turns 65, it's their baby boomers, and the current care models won't work. You can't just keep putting people into buildings and saying that's grand. It's going to have to be different. The idea of consumer-driven, customer-driven, people now understand, well, this costs me a lot of money, therefore I expect. The generation who are grateful for everything are becoming the generation like us who will demand everything, so they will have to change it up. I know, well, actually I'll get more bang for my buck down the road. So they know they're going to have to change. And the funding model is about proving that you're providing personalised care. It's not just like brought someone in, put them on a care plan, and that was it. It's the constant looking, it's constant personalised care, updating care plans, pass that information back. So the whole industry realises change is needed, but change can be used to optimise, think about things differently as well. So I could go on all night, but I'll leave it there. I have the tablets here, a couple of them, if anyone wants to come up and have a play around and go through it a bit more. So as that, thank you for listening to us. Thanks for having us. Yes. Any questions too? John, bring it back up. Do you want to ask one? Hi.
Hi there. James Saris, anthropologist from Duke University, and with the Assisting Living and Learning Institute. Very sophisticated, really, really interesting stuff. Thank you for that. But I think I'd like to point out a slight break between the 2 presentations, where the businessmen seem more appreciative of social phenomena, and the researcher seemed a bit less. So the challenge I'd like to put out there is, what is a person? And you know, the title of this is called the Quantified Self, and you 2 talked about person. And I say this not to be kind of, you know, weird, but I come from a discipline that has way more than a century of meticulous cross-cultural examination of those terms, spending years at a time. And I teach an entire semester called Psychological Anthropology, just looking at those terms. So, I mean, maybe to tease out, what do you think a person is? Because what I'm strongly suspicious is that a person is a thing, and probably an individual thing, that then gets built out. Whereas I think what's the business guy is saying, that a person is a set of relationships, and the horrible thing that happens when someone's moved out of that is they're stripped of adjectives. They're stripped of my relationships. So it's not the 2 pillows that matter, it's my bed. It's, and so, you know, how do you manage that conceptually? Because I think that this is where, you know, the HSE funds me for person-centered research, and the HRB does. And I really have no idea how a lot of care structures think about the person. All I know is it's quite contradictory. So, like, what's the idea that's really forming this as a research issue?
Yeah, I suppose you've highlighted the core idea, and the ideas around relational autonomy, so that we are relational beings, and our quality of life and quality of our experience of being in the world is predicated on how we relate to other people. And we relate as subjects, we're not objects, so we're not trying to, with this technology, objectify the person or think of them as a consumer of technology. We're actually thinking of them as a person who has relationships with other people and relationship with themselves, so they have an identity and things that matter. So as Sean described in the room, having one pillow as opposed to, two, these things form who the person is. A person isn't just preferences, they are someone with thinking and, various levels of ability. Personally speaking, I'm informed by phenomenological approaches and understandings of human being. I spent quite a few years in that context, and that's what we're kind of trying to bring into this. So in terms of methodology, we've been looking at investigating lived experience. So the whole point of, talking to older adults and doing interviews and this piece of qualitative research and ethnography is to get at this and to get at what it means to age and for your identity to be challenged in multiple ways and to learn to adapt to your new health situation and your new social situation with other adults and the people in your community that matter to you. And that's really the kind of the foundation. So we had a slide there where we had the 3 pillars of well-being, and we had the different actors in your personal and professional community. So this relational sense. So this is the guiding principle, if you like. Does that make sense? Does that?
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, logically, those things cohere. I would probably press that a little bit and say, for what we are, which is almost kind of a version of bees, not quite, but nearly. The decisive factor of that is if you feel a sense of personal alienation, you have a huge health burden tied onto that. I mean, that's true down to rats. If you give rats opiates singly or in a group, they have completely different problems. And so that question of the fundamental sociality of humans and the surprise with places that individuate them in very specific ways.
Yeah.
And if the research program starts with the individual, it almost always replicates the same kinds of mistakes.
So this is starting from the individual in relationships in a community. So that's our starting point. We all have in the room, family members, and some of them may have, had experience where they've woken up from a stroke, and they're fundamentally alienated from this new identity of having, a paralysis, So there is the physical experience of this, and there's the other pillars in terms of how it impacts on how you communicate and interact. And really what this technology is to support ability and what capacity remains such that someone can persist and enjoy and get what they can out of these social relationships and maintain their identity. And that's a shifting identity. I mean, the game does change when, your health, all aspects, mental health, physical health changes, and we can't ignore that. So there was that slide where we looked at, different states and those to manage and, mitigate. And there's some kind of negative states there, so we're cognizant of this. But yeah, the relational aspect is foundational in this research, I would say. And thank you for that, Mary.
Hi, Joan. Thank you. It was great. It's so exciting to hear that all of these in motion. I think coming away from the self a little more, I think what I love what you're doing is looking at the process of caring. Because if you look at it as with the ing at the end of it, then you're including everything. And when you're looking at that process of more. And my question is around, I suppose, the quantified self is that it's all these different sources of data building you as a self. If you're looking at it from that angle, like me with my Fitbit, that's me, buying into my quantified self. But the personalization you have going on within the AI is lovely. So while it's still generic, I suppose, data coming in, the small little changes to the room or the personalization is really, really nice. What's the feedback you're getting when you're talking when you're out on site, I suppose, doing the research? What kind of feedback are you getting from staff on it? Are they kind of like, oh, it sounds like a lot of effort, or is it?
So I suppose we haven't just presented a vision. We have advanced division in collaboration with the stakeholders who are involved in research. And it's, I suppose the main findings have been this is needed, but this is what we're doing, but we're not necessarily doing it in a sophisticated way with technology. And I suppose you have the idea of, a really good nurse or a really good care assistant, and they're doing this, they know what matters, they spend time, they're engaged at that level. And then you have an idea of someone who's in on, on a contract over a weekend, who doesn't know the residents and doesn't know the environment they're in, and isn't necessarily familiar with the processes, and how do they work in that. And so they're aware that there can be failures of professionalism in these kind of different, between these kind of two extremes, and that this is needed. But the large concern is over the unintended consequences. So you introduce these new technologies, but you actually have a nurse coming in with a tablet that's getting in the way of care, it's getting in the way of eye contact. So, we know for older adults with dementia, the touch is really important. So are they holding a tablet in their hand and they're not, making eye contact, touching, So there are concerns around that, and these are being addressed. So there's we have a notion like a placeholder in some of the screens around evaluating, in-person care. So how often is someone in the room? We can't, CCTV isn't allowed. We can't, have sensors which are picking up on tone and voice, but which we need to do something around this and manage those. But yeah, the process and understanding the process and framing this in terms of care processes is very important. Thank you. Yes.
Can I just ask you, you said that, that you've done a lot of business in Australia, and I'm just wondering, how open is Ireland to change? So this would represent a change in the way things are managed in, for example, a nursing home. And would Australia be a place that's maybe more open to it? I would expect us to be, they're really nice, but not for us. What kind of be the attitude here? I could be wrong. And I'm just wondering, have you seen much difference in openness to changing processes in Australia?
Yeah, so look, a lot of that's down to scale. So in Australia, you have a lot of national care providers in this space. So they're at an enterprise level. So they have enough behind them. They could have anything from 6,000 to 12,000 resident rooms, beds. So they're looking at big enterprise solutions to run and provide care in a better manner all the way through. Ireland is more typically privately owned, privately run individual care homes. So hasn't really been consolidated. Culturally in Ireland, where we stay at home, and traditionally would have gone to family member, and then when you had a significant care event, you move in, so kind of post-stroke, and it's kind of like we can no longer care, and you move in. So particularly Australia have a bit more of that assisted living. I will retire now, and I'll make the next move, and I'll move to the coast. The US, similar. Let's retire to Florida. They're a bit transient by nature. People move around. We're more tribal by nature. There's some amazing research out of Ireland. So I did like the Dundalk Institute Technology, there's Casala, and they have 7 years of living labs. Like we've been connected with them. There's a big research project bringing together academic and industry at a global level at a Limerick. And so they link into ISACs, which is going to be a big data exchange of collecting what is this wellness from a lived experience of residents, and we're hoping to plug into that as well. So in terms of smart aging and this kind of aging and the economy of aging, Ireland is really pushing to get the forefront of it. I get we're a small island when it comes to investment. We also, like a lot of countries, haven't really reacted to this change until they're at the coalface. Like so, the baby boomers in Australia and America are there now. There's a huge amount of innovation out of Japan because they're at crisis point. They have a real issue where they're going to lose something like 30% of their population over the next few decades, and in social isolation based on their social networking that the people don't really, they're a bit more private and in their homes. They're looking at repurposing postal service. So on your postal round, we have one thing as our post offices, people don't send as many letters. We're closing down rural post offices because they don't have to deliver as many letters. Well, you're a postman and you know you have X number of seniors on your route who are at risk of social isolation. You give that postal worker enough time to come in and have a cup of tea, basically, and have a chat. So they're the point of social contact. They can say, you need a prescription, I'll be the person to bring that to you. They give smart aging and ambient sensors in your home. The local fireman can service that because they tend to have a trade and they're trusted people in your environment, but that's a social interaction. And that is aging in place. You should age in your own home and your care should evolve around you. And that's not really set up like that, but it's going to have to get there. And I guess, necessity is the mother of all invention, and that's where it's at the moment.
Hi. First of all, it's very good that you're working on this problem. It's a very interesting area. And what I was wondering is that all this elderly people, especially the ones that have some illnesses, how would you incentivize them to actually give enter data or use the application? That's one, and the second is I'm more curious about the sensors. What kind of sensors are you going to use, or what kind of data are you going to collect?
Yeah, so the sensors could be straight passive movement sensors like we have in this room. That could be your alarm system you've passed through or you haven't. And so are you in your bed, are you not? Have you left your bedroom, are you in your living space? Have you left your apartment today, or did you just not leave your apartment? How many times are you in your bathroom? Did you have erratic movements during the night? Were you turning on and off light switches? So that's all the idea of just kind of binary events and then sending messaging, and that will be collected in our analytics platform. I guess the magic is wrapping a care context around that and then providing that to the right person that they can action that for a reason. There's a lot of innovation. Down in Melbourne last year, linked in the Deakin University, and they have an innovation lab, and they're looking at this idea of sensors but linked with the voice assistant, and this idea of and a button on the voice assistant. So you've done something, but is everything okay? And if you're okay, just touch the button, or if not, we can escalate. And then in the case of where the analytics happens on the edge or back in the platform. But there's quite a lot there. There's talk the voice assistant. That's where it's going. The multimodal and basically the UI-less interfaces. So voice assistants, you're the resident in your room, and it's like, oh hey, OneView, what have I got on today? It's like, oh, you haven't completed your wellness survey. You've got social activity at 2 o'clock for arts and crafts, and there's another event tonight, and that'll be the interaction. That will really the idea of tablets and touch and smartphones got us over the hump of people who were laptops are a bit more intimidating. This is more intuitive. The leap to voice assistant it's probably already Alexa's already been trialed in care homes across the States.
Just to add to what Sean said, there has been, in terms of the stakeholder research, I suppose lots of concerns expressed how, not just how are you gathering the data, but who has access to it and how are they using it to make care decisions, and could it be used against me? So, currently if the nurse or care assistant might spot things, and that means that I can stay comfortable in my situation, maybe that's a good thing, because if they have this more, sophisticated picture of my wellness, maybe, and they're, predicting problems, even before this has arisen, maybe that won't, fare well for me, that my care will change before I'm ready for it to change, So that's in residential homes. Some of the research that we did with people in their own homes, it was interesting. I mean, it links back into concepts around intrinsic motivation. So, when I talk to older adults about, would you consider a pendant? Would you use that? And maybe okay. What about activity monitoring sensors to say where have I moved my bedroom, to the kitchen? People said, well, this is an intrusion. I really don't want this. Like civil liberties. This is, and I don't want my family, getting access to this information. But if you say, well, this is actually something that can keep you in your home and living independently, well, then you're more intrinsically motivated to accept it. But there is a thing where consistently people have said, well, one thing that makes family members call is uncertainty or fear. So, for example, if you don't know whether mum has left her bedroom and is in the kitchen, you don't have any indicators to say, are they okay, you will ring, so you'll make social contact. If a family member could look from their phone and see that mum has made a cup of tea in the kitchen, she's got out of bed, she's left the house, maybe they won't call, because the fear aspects or the uncertainty or any anxiety that a family member might have, which motivates them in turn to make contact, has been mitigated by the technology. So then you have that again, that unintended consequence where there isn't person to person, there isn't a voice at the other end of the phone. So.
what about the first question, how are you going to incentivize people to actually use the application? Because like it's kind of like work for them, right? So like you have to do stuff. Right?
So incentivize the care assistants or nursing
The
staff, or
patients
you mean
themselves.
patients? I suppose we need to demonstrate, and we're hoping to do this research, improvements and enhancements to well-being and how it's managed, and better patient-centred care, respect, dignity, partnership and care around these themes. But we do need to demonstrate this, so that's part of the plan.
And there is research, and I know about Casala, is idea of assisted living houses where people living in anchored with a tablet experience have just high usage rates. So there's some things of, I still can learn, I connect with my family, I can get a positive feedback loop of, I achieved that, and accessing your own information, breaking down the barriers of, I can't break it. And that was the point in the work we've done with Joan of creating like the UI that's inviting, that's senior-centric, that it's simple enough to use, but it's not oversimplified, because the other side is you want this idea of cognitive pull, you want people still learning and doing, but that you can't get lost in the experience and go, I don't know how, I'm just going to put that away, like how do I end up doing that? So that the reassurance that you're always kind of, the idea of like one step forward, one step back, and the home button that you can always go back to, the home button which brings you back to that kind of screen that you saw. So that's kind of research driven on how it's built, and then once we get all the residents using it, we get all the analytics data in the background from, in our UX we think residents will go 1, 2, 3, 4. It turns out they use it in 1, 4, 3, 2, and then we can re-optimize our workflows within the apps.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much again.